So if you don't know what quantum mechanics is, you're missing out on the most scientifically verified evidence that reality isn't what it seems. In fact, it strongly suggests that we're living in some simulation or a matrix, if you want to call it that. Take this object, for example. Looks solid, right? But if you drill down and you zoom in all the way down to the particles and down to the atoms, you eventually reach subatomic particles. And when you reach that layer, that's when things start to get fuzzy and disappear. See, the subatomic particles that literally makes up everything, such as a car, a TV, a table, or even this body, is not in one fixed form like you'd expect. They exist in what's called a superposition, which is just a potential for all the possible ways the particles can exist as. And all of these different possibilities are hidden simultaneously. They're just all the possible states a particle can exist, and they're hidden simultaneously until it is observed. It's like code in a simulation that's waiting to be rendered the moment you observe. So the moment you observe it, all those possibilities collapse except for one, and that is what you see. That very moment is known as the wave function collapse. Now, there's many different interpretations of quantum mechanics. An interpretation is just an attempt to describe reality based on what the incredibly accurate math of quantum mechanics presents us. The Copenhagen interpretation, for example, is one such interpretation which says the observer is what causes the collapse. Now, when we say the word observer, a lot of people immediately think it's consciousness or some metaphysical concept. But this is not what an observer means when we're talking about this interpretation. An observer here is considered a classical system. In other words, it could be this body, it could be some measuring device, it could be some other object. But the problem here is this interpretation considers the observer to be a classical system, which is completely nonsensical because everything is made up of quantum particles. So why separate the observer from what is being measured if everything is made up of quantum particles? See, the many worlds interpretation resolves this. It treats everything as quantum particles. It's actually the purest version of quantum mechanics because it doesn't add any type of rules to the equations because of what your limited mindset believes in. It just leaves the Schrodinger's equation alone, and it implies that there's an existence of many worlds. So instead of all these different possibilities collapsing but one, and that one is what you see, all those possibilities are already there. They don't disappear. They exist in different parallel worlds. Now, these parallel worlds are not worlds existing in the same time and space. Each world has its own version of time and space. This is why this view or this interpretation is more accurate, even though the Copenhagen interpretation is widely accepted amongst physicists and is taught in schools and universities. It's just that a lot of people don't want to believe that because it doesn't feel like everything's in a superposition. So I was contemplating on this, and I thought of a helpful analogy that can help explain the difference between the Copenhagen interpretation and the many worlds interpretation. So let's say you're in a casino. The Copenhagen interpretation is this. There's a slot machine, and you see one result, all the others disappear. The many worlds says, you're part of the slot machine. All those results happen. There's a version of you that sees each one. Now, a lot of people don't want to believe this because it goes against their experience. They think it's woo-woo. But this is literally what happens. This is what you'll experience when you go close to non-dual truth. Now, the fundamental question that's unanswered in quantum mechanics is this role of consciousness. What is consciousness and what role does it play? Well, let's take a step back. If we're talking about the many worlds interpretation, and there's many different versions of you because all these possibilities are already there just in different parallel worlds, then there must be some underlying observer behind each and every world. You can't say that you're just one version of those many different branches because branches are happening so rapidly. It's happening like 1 trillion times per second anytime there's an interaction. And these interactions are so small, they could be a neuron firing. So why would you say that, okay, you're this version and now you're that version? That's like me saying, okay, instead of this picture, I'm that picture. But now I'm this picture. How can that be the real you if it's all just inert pictures? There must be some underlying observer that is constant throughout all of the pictures. After all, there has to be some unchanging consciousness to perceive the change. Otherwise, you can't perceive change. And this is why consciousness is the truth. It's consciousness that's behind the wave function. It's consciousness that's behind the superposition. It's consciousness behind the code. It's consciousness behind everything. Because consciousness is non-dual, everything has to exist at once. That means that all worlds are existing simultaneously, which is what the universal superposition is. That is what the universal wave function is. Everything is happening simultaneously at once, and consciousness is underlying all of it.